Here's some questions that deal with slopes and finding slopes and y-intercepts and equations of lines. For these first two, I think that they are just looking for finding the slope of the line. And to find the slope of any line, you need to figure out what the rise is over what the run is. Now, to do that, you've got to pick a starting point and an ending point. So when I took a look at this line, you just have to pick 2 points that are on the line. So I'm picking probably this point right here, that one there, and that point would be 0, 2. And then, I don't know, there's another point on the line, maybe this one right there. And the graph isn't really accurate, but I'm probably going to pick that point. And that point is 4 and -1. So to find the slope between those 2 points, and that'll be a consistent slope because the line's straight, I can do rise over run. So from this point here, this one, I'm going to go up. So 1, 2, 3. So my rise will be 3. And then my run is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll be, and it's going left, so it'll be a -4. So if you ever go left, it's negative. If you ever go down, it's also negative. If you're going right, positive, up, positive. So my slope for that line would be that. Now, if you wanted to, you could also figure out fairly easily what the whole equation for the line would be. So the slope would be -3/4, and then your y-intercept is at 2. So I could write a +2 there. Okay, let's try this next one too. And maybe you try it and then come back and take a look. So find any point that's on the line. Maybe that point right there. And that point is -2 and a +2. And then find another point. I'm going to find one way over here to the right here. So let's maybe go 5 right there. It looks like it's at 5 and -5. Okay, so to find the slope, rise over run. So let's pick this point to start from. So I'll go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have to rise 7. And then I'm gonna go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, I have to go over 7, but it's 7 left. So if you simplify that, that just comes out to -1. Now, you could also, rather than just doing rise over run, you could use that slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And let's pick this as x1, y1, this x2, y2. So y2 is a -5 minus y1 is a 2 all over x2 is a 5 minus x1 is a -2. So if I simplify that on the top, that gives me a -7. On the bottom, these two cancel, so it'd be +2, it'd be a +7. So again, I come up with a slope of -1. The equation of the line, if you wanted to write that, y equals mx plus b. So y equals, the slope is -1x, and the y-intercept is right at 0. So I could write +0, or I wouldn't even need to write that. I could just write y equals -1x. So that's how to find slope. Now here's some questions where you have to find the equation of the line given 2 points that are on the line. Some of these involve fractions. Let's maybe try this one right there. Now to do this one, if I need to find an equation, I need to come up with an m and a b. So I have to find the slope, I have to find the y-intercept. They don't give me either of those to begin with. So the first thing I'll do is find the slope. I could graph this and from the graph figure out what the slope would be, but it might be easier just to do the y2 minus 1 over x2 minus x1. Let's call this x1, y1, x2, and y2. So y2 is a half minus y1, oh, is also a half. Oh, interesting. Over x2 is 1 minus a -3. So a half minus a half would be 0 over these cancel, so this would be 4. But the slope of that line if you have a 0 on the bottom, on the top, would just be 0. So if I'm writing my equation, there'd have a 0x there plus whatever the y-intercept is. 0 times x is just 0, so really the equation of this line is going to be whatever the y-intercept is. Now to find the y-intercept, I could graph it again. I'm thinking the y-intercept is a half because it seemed like the y value is a half for everything. But I can always go back to this equation here and plug in things that I know. So let's use that one, and I'm going to plug in. It doesn't matter which point. Let's plug in this second point. So the y value for that second point is a half, is equal to 0 times the x value is a 1 plus b. Okay, so I've just used the same equation, and if I know a point, I can put in an x and a y value. If I figured out the slope, I can put that in, and I can solve for b. 0 times 1 is 0, plus b is equal to a half, so b is equal to a half. And that would be, so if b is a half, then that would be what I'd plug in right there. So the equation of that line is equal to a half. All right, let's maybe also try this one right there. I'll do this in a different color so you can sort of tell the difference which it is. So again, I need to find slope. So slope is y2, let me just put these x2, y2. So y2, that would be 4/5 minus y1 is 0 over x2, 0, minus x1, -5. So I'll have 4/5 over 0 plus 5, so it'll be 5. Now here I've got a double fraction or a complex fraction. The way I simplify those is I write this symbol there as a divide sign. So I go 4/5 divided by 5. And then I know to divide fractions, I have to multiply by the reciprocal. So if I'm dividing by 5 over 1, I can change that to a multiplied by a 1 over 5. Or, in other words, the slope will be 4 over 25. So that's the slope of my line. Now, to figure out what the y-intercept is, oh, this one, if x is 0, the y-intercept is this number right there. So my equation will be y equals mx plus b. I know the slope, 4 over 25x, and I know the y-intercept is a positive 4 over 5. All right, hopefully that helps you with those kind. Another kind of question that we can look at. And let's do, say, 47. So 47 says find the equation of the line. So I need to come up with y equals mx plus b that goes through this point and is parallel to this line. So what I need to first figure out, I guess when I'm looking at the equation, I need to figure out a slope and I need to figure out a y-intercept. I'm not given any of those, but I'm given this equation of a line from which I should be able to get a slope. So if I take that equation, 3x plus 4y equals 5, and I'm going to solve it for y. So I'll subtract 3x from both sides and get this, and then I'll divide all terms by 4 just to get my y by itself. So plus 5 over 4. So this line here has a slope of -3/4. So I found the slope. So if I'm writing my equation mx plus b, I know that the slope is -3/4. Okay, and I have all this other stuff. So all I have to do now is figure out what the y-intercept is. So to figure out the y-intercept, what I'll do is I'll take this point here, and that's an x and a y value. And if I know what the slope is, then I can plug those into my general equation. So I'm going to use a point, and I'm going to use a slope to figure out what the y-intercept is. Okay, so my point is 3 and -2, so the y value is a -2. The slope is -3/4. The x value is a 3. That's that one right there. Plus b. And what I'm going to solve now for is b. So I have minus 2 is equal to, this is like 3 over 1, so it'll be minus 9 over 4 plus b. And I want b by itself, so I'll add 9/4 to both sides. And again, if I add 9/4 to this side, they cancel, and add 9/4 to that side. So b is equal to, and I could do this on the calculator, -2 plus 9/4, or you could change and get common denominator. Common denominator would be 4. And so if I multiply the bottom by 4, I have to multiply the top by 4, so that'd be a -8. -8 plus 9 would be 1, so the y-intercept is 1/4. So up here, positive 1/4, that would be the equation of the line that passes through this point and is parallel to that line. Now, the other question that they do ask in 47 is they say, figure it out if it's parallel to this line, but also figure it out if it's perpendicular to that line. So if it's perpendicular to that line, I'll just start you on it here. So lines that are perpendicular have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other. So if I have the slope of a line that is -3/4, the slope of a perpendicular line would be equal to positive 4/3. Okay, so perpendicular means if you have a slope this way, a perpendicular line is one that crosses it at a 90-degree angle. So for example, this line here might have a slope of -3/4. So the slope of this line has to be a positive 4/3. So, and it's two questions, two separate questions. So if my slope then for the line is positive 4/3, then I can do the same thing as I did here to figure out the new y-intercept. So my equation is y equals mx plus b. I know the slope is 4/3. My x value again is 3, and my y value is -2. That's from this point up there, plus b, and then again solve for b. So it'll be -2 equals 4 times 3 is 12, divided through, oh, that's just a plain number, 4, plus b. Then I'll subtract 4 on both sides. And so the y-intercept for that line will be -6. So the equation of that line will be y is equal to, the slope is 4/3 x, and the y-intercept is a -6. That's the slope of that one. All right, hopefully that helps you with some of those slope-intercept equations.